Goldinvest. Explore opportunity.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest Goldinvest interview. I'm especially excited to be able to talk to Jonathan Eglio today, CEO of AxoCopper, first copper company to go public via a real IPO on the TSX Venture Exchange in a long time. Heads up, the company will probably have started trading by the time this interview airs, but let's get the details. Welcome, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bjorn.
So, as I said, Axo, ticker is AXO, by the way, not surprisingly, is the first company to list on the TSX Venture via an IPO as opposed to an RTO or similar for a long time. Which leads me to my question, why copper and why now? The IPO especially.
Two-part question. The first would be why copper? I guess for all of us who started the company, and probably a lot of people agree, it's more of a consensus take, but global electrification is real. I guess there's a lot of debate that can be had about the pace at which global electrification is accelerating, but it is undeniably, whether what pace you pick, medium pace, fast pace, it is undeniably driving long-term demand. And I take a lot of solace in the macro picture for copper over the long term, not just because of the demand outlook, but more important to me and more tangible is the fact that there haven't really been enough significant new discoveries over the past 5 years, over the past 10 years, even over the past 15 years to really even keep up with current demand, let alone when we factor in an increased pace. And we've also seen, a lot of new copper builds, or even if there are good projects on the ground, they run into a lot of hurdles. A few come to mind. Panama would probably be the most biggest and obvious one that would come to mind. But, even when we're finding new copper, it's very difficult to get it out of the ground. And despite the fact that we've seen a nice run in the copper price, I think probably most would agree that even something like a base of $4 copper is not necessarily the level that will incentivize a new build for some of these massive, large-scale porphyries up in the Andes that need a lot of water. So I am a copper bull long-term. And then I guess why IPO now? Really, for Axo, it's just the natural evolution of the company to bring in new investors, drive our most ambitious, exploration program yet to date. We want to expand, we want to get bigger rapidly. And so just bringing on new investors through access to the public market, that was really our rationale to go public.
Okay, perfect. But before we get into that, what is AxoCopper all about? Let's talk a bit about you. Give us a bit of background on yourself, because especially with the junior mining companies, it's always important to know who's on the behind the helm, behind the wheel. And also perhaps a bit short overview of the most salient members of your team.
Yeah, I can start with myself. As president CEO, I joined into this role 1 year ago, so the summer of 2024, with the goal of taking the company public. My background before this role, I was an equity research analyst at Desjardins Capital Markets, covering not only copper equities, but also precious metals equities, kind of the whole suite, from everything from exploration up to mid-tier and large-scale producer. So I was a research analyst in Toronto for several years. And before that, my background was in mining engineering. So I worked for Detour Gold, and I had a technical mining engineering background. The team itself, you could see from our board of directors, we have an overlapping board. And also from some of the prospectus materials you see filed, we also have overlapping founders with not only Silver Tiger, but also Go Gold. And that's really the team behind it. So it's a group that's developed numerous mines in Mexico, built them ourselves over the past 20 years. That includes Ocampo, El Cubo, Parral. We've sold projects to majors like Santa Gertrude is selling to Agnico Eagle. And that's really the foundation and the group that discovered this project, a few years ago, and then formed this copper company to pick it up, and it's been ran privately for 3 years.
And so, as you said, now the time has come to take it public and get more funds in and get more aggressive on the ground. Good, thank you very much. Interesting and impressive team there. To start us off learning more about your La Huerta project, I think it is called. Please tell us briefly about the history of your project. How did you first hear about it? What made you acquire this especially? And also perhaps what kind of work programs have been completed there so far?
Yeah. So our group first heard about this project. Well, I'll take one step back. So around 2017 or 2018, there was a local Mexican family that discovered high-grade copper outcropping at surface in their own backyard. And as artisanal miners do down there, they started mining it. So they were doing pretty high grades, between 4 and 5% copper for 3 or 4 years. They built their own small scale 250 ton per day sulfide flotation plant. And this project is located in Jalisco State, which not coincidentally in Mexico is the same state that Go Gold's Los Ricos is. So we have a team on the ground there at all times. They heard about this project, this small artisanal mine that was up and running. And what we found was something that was very high grade, very profitable, but it was run by this local family who didn't necessarily care about scale, right? They were happy to run it at 250 tons per day. They weren't really doing any real exploration work to figure out what scale it should or could be run at. That's really when we stepped in, and that was the opportunity for us, was to pick up the project off the family. I like to think that they did kind of a 3 or 4 year bulk sample de-risking project for us, but really just kind of step back and knowing that, kind of in our back pocket already was an operating mine. Really, the goal now is to test it for scale and drill it off. And, we've been doing the first kind of real exploration work on the project to see at what point, production level it should be restarted at. So the work programs, there's been about 11,000 meters drilled. The company had raised so far about $15 million Canadian privately.
Okay.
And so we're restarting our next phase of drilling imminently right now. Drill's just getting site.
Okay, interesting. Through the IPO, you will collect another 10 million or thereabouts, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, at least another 10 million before any kind of over-allotment. So you'll see, probably by the time this press release comes out, you'll see the final closing number.
Okay.
Or sorry, by the time this video comes out.
Understood. So tell us a bit about, in more detail about the La Huerta project. What kind of structures do you have there? You alluded to it already, but tell us more about a bit. I think it's pretty near the surface, the high-grade stuff. And also there's depth potential, right?
The private family was mining before we got there, was from surface. They took it down about 40 or 50 meters. Their pit, or whatever you want to call it, cut was about 10 meters wide, and it went for about 150 meters along strike. So one of the first things we did when we got a look at the project was, make sure they just weren't taking out some small high-grade jewelry box. So we sampled the base of it. You can see the results on our website, but we were seeing, like 26% copper at the base of the pit in some samples. And then it's been drilled down since to about 200 meters. Some of the better drilling is, 14 meters at 5%, 9.5 meters at 7%. Like there's been some good results, and quite reminiscent of the grades that the family was mining. But not only that, we've also found the structure, this high grade copper sulfide dike traced for, it does come to surface, and we've traced it for, 5 kilometers. So that's what the system is. It's a high grade, steeply dipping copper sulfide dike. Mineralization is just hosted in chalcopyrite and boronite, but really we envision this as a, larger scale bulk underground mine, despite the fact that they were taking it from surface. It has widths that are more reminiscent of an underground project.
Okay, well, that sounds very interesting. I mean, high grade is good. Portion here near the surface is also good, and then the potential to find more at depth. When we're talking about depth, what kind of depth are we talking here?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the deepest drilling is about 200 meters below surface. I imagine with this program where there's some, because it comes straight up to surface, there are some, I guess, easy wins that we can get in terms of stepping out along strike without doing some crazy deep holes. But at the same time, there's no indication that this deposit stops at 200 meters below surface. That'd be pretty unusual for a copper deposit. We'll be testing it, 350, 400 meters below surface and really just chasing it down. We also have the thesis, of course, looking at this. What is we ask ourselves the question, what is the source of this mineralization? It's not every day you see a copper sulfide dike that is pure copper. So we do think this could be part of some kind of larger district. And one of the goals of this program is to keep tracing that high grade and almost use it as to vector in on what potential for the source mineralization would be.
Okay, but that leads me a couple of questions ahead, really. But when you say, what is the source? Is this like porphyry or a big thing, structure or body that you would have to put thousands and thousands of meters of drilling into. Is your aim to like drill that up, make the project look nice for bigger company? Do you want to build a mine? How would you do that if you have such a big structure? Would it help that you have the high grade?
Well, the high grade for sure helps, and that's really our key to unlocking the district, right? I mean, we do think that this is evidence of some kind of porphyry district. That's not unusual for Mexico. Like Mexico's most famous copper porphyry district is further north of us in Sonora, in Cananea. And right now it's all mined, 0.3, 0.4, this lower grade bulk tonnage mining by Grupo Mexico. But 100 years ago, it was mined out through these high grade copper dikes and high grade breccias. And, they were doing between 5, 6, 7% copper at times. It's just that being a more mature district, the best grades were mined out, 100 years ago. Right. So we're seeing what we're seeing is more evidence of some laramide age copper district, but because it's under a lot more cover than under Sonora and hasn't seen as much exploration, we think we could be on, kind of the tip of the iceberg of this kind of things. Now, that doesn't mean that the goal here is to hopefully find a low grade porphyry, right? We think we found, kind of the crown jewel of the system first. And really what that allows us to do is, you mentioned drilling something off to put a bow on it to sell to a major. We kind of have the opposite approach where we don't really want to be drilling long intervals of low grade porphyry because it's very expensive. Yes. The drilling itself is very expensive. It's very dilutive and difficult for a junior to drill that out to any kind of meaningful scale without adding massive dilution. So for us, the benefit is, we drill off something high grade first. Maybe it's part of a porphyry district. Maybe the porphyry's high grade. Maybe it's low grade. But really drill off the high grade first as a means to put it into production and unlock more of the district, right? We don't want to be in a place where we're just drilling low grade holes in the hopes of getting taken out, because that can be very destructive and dilutive game long term if you're not, the one porphyry that's getting taken out this year or next year. There's a lot of low grade porphyries out there, and vast majority of them don't get bought.
Okay, that's very interesting. I love it. Very good approach, in my opinion. That's sort of the end goal there. But what about the plans for the nearer future? Let's say the IPO is done, you have the money in the coffers. What kind of drilling are you going to do? Are you only going to follow this trend you already seen, or are you going to step out to some regional work too?
No, we're doing some regional work. The bulk of the drilling is where we think we can add the most high grade tons. The easiest and the fastest is in and around where the family was mining. So there's really this 1 to 1.5 kilometer strike length that will be the focus of the majority of our drilling. We're looking to do 15,000 meters with this next program, and I'd say about 70% of that would be over this 1 kilometer strike length. We are doing a lot of work and have been doing a lot of work since the beginning of this year of defining some parallel structures. And, some of the results that we've already published thus far as part of the IPO, we were seeing around 6.5% copper in a different structure at surface, 3 kilometers away, different looking structure, different looking trend that hasn't been tested with a drill bit. We think, like we mentioned, this is some district and we can maybe find more of these trends. Really, this is kind of the best indication of something else that we found that would be another opportunity. So you'll see us not only putting out drill results on the main structure and the main trend that the family in and around where the family was mining, but also some of these new discoveries and parallel trends that have yet to see a drill hole.
Okay. Very good. It's always good to hear. There's perhaps there you find the next high-grade structure only 2 kilometers away, and then for the future you can drill that out, and gives a lot of additional potential there. Very nice. What is your 60 seconds pitch? Why should investors take a closer look at the company, take a position in the company now?
I'd say we're kind of in this period right now where we're post-discovery, pre-resource. Like, we know we have something here. We know it's very unique. It's very high grade. And now is the time where we test it not only for scale, but also test some of these new discoveries, right? So there's a bunch of different terms, I guess you could use for this stage of the company, but on the Lassonde curve, it'd be the exploration where you test for scale is where I see the best returns for for junior mining companies, right? The de-risking parts will come. The de-risking parts are necessary, but this is kind of the next exciting genesis and stage of the company. And I'd also say, we're different in this kind of long-term view we take of this, not only myself, but also the founders and the board, right? We're not just looking for something to drill off rapidly, put a bow on it, and sell. We think this is kind of the beginning of the first inning and kind of a cornerstone asset for Axo to develop as a company and put something into production that can be a scale that a junior could actually finance and build, like the team has done in the past.
Thank you very much. I think that's it for the first interview with Axo Copper and CEO Jonathan Eglio. We'll be sure to talk again, especially when the drilling starts and when results are coming out. So good luck with the IPO. It's going to be this week, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn.